Welcome, everyone, to the Pick Six Podcast, where we talk about the biggest and best stories in college football. I'm your host, Chris Cheng, and joining me, as always, is my best man, Rudy Tamarchio. Rudy, before we jump into today's stories about spring football, the Carson Beck drama, we've got to acknowledge a major thing that happened this week. As of right now, we currently have crossed the threshold of 100 subscribers. We have done it, Rudy. Can you believe it, man? 100 subscribers.
I have something for that I think goes without saying in a Miami way.
Hey, listen.
Let's go!
Let's go! Listen, 100 subscribers may sound like nothing to you guys, but listen, I'm all about celebrating the wins and the victories, no matter how big, how small. This is awesome. I'm super proud of us. I just want to thank, I'm just going to go down a list, just name the first few subscribers we've seen. Vinny Versace, Ronnie Brown, Gene Rousseau, Fighter Kane, Ariel Tejera, Adam Samuel, Michigan Kane, Kermit Russell, Daryl Milton, Steven Siltzer. Thank you guys for subscribing, watching this. You guys could be watching any other YouTube channel, which you probably are. You just subscribed to add us to your cachet, and I'm cool with that. Just keep watching. We thank you all. But Rudy, we've got to jump into the news. We got spring football going on right now. Not the most interesting thing for a lot of programs because you're technically kind of just trying out your new talent. You're getting people, you're rubbing the rust off, getting the dust and cobwebs off, getting ready for fall. But our boy Deion could not help himself and made headlines saying that he was interested in playing another school. He while everyone else is canceling games and getting rid of their spring game, Deion's like, hey, I'm prime time. Let's make this prime time. Let's kick it up a nickel. I want to invite another program out here. And without hesitation, Syracuse's Fran Brown was like, hey, we can come out to Boulder in 3 days and be there for 3 days. Your call, prime time. We all call prime time. What do you think of Deion shooting his shot and trying to get another program to play him during the spring?
I mean, look, this is what people who come from the professional sports world are going to do. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, look, anybody who watched Hard Knocks, even before Hard Knocks came out, there were always split training camps where in, fall practice, you would see different NFL teams work out alongside each other and scrimmage each other.
Yeah.
So why not have it happen in college? Now, if there were NCAA guidelines, withholding that before that are somehow relaxed, or if he's just doing it for headlines to say like, hey, this may be illegal for now, but we'd like to see if there's enough interest out there to make a change and make this happen. Why not? I mean, I think if you look at like outdated NCAA regulations that are out there, maybe this was kind of like a cost thing, because if you're looking like, 40, 50 years ago in the, outdated days of NCAA football, you had your own private training camp and you really didn't tell anybody what was going on, and you weren't going to just pick up everybody and leave. I mean, look, I think the equivalent of this, or something that's like probably the closest thing in the ballpark, was Michigan with Jim Harbaugh a few years ago, where they used to go overseas and do like a week-long or 2-week-long training camp in a different country. So he used to take Michigan on the road and take them to like Italy and France. Make it part of like a cultural thing. They're like, hey, you get to see all this wonderful stuff, that you get to play football and you get to travel the world and do all these other things with Michigan. And also because who the hell wants to be in Michigan any more than they have to?
Yeah.
I'm not saying Michigan, I'm not going to single them out. I'll say between Ann Arbor, Columbus, South Bend, Tuscaloosa, College Station, you name it. Why do you want to be there all the time? If you could take that operation and bring it on the road and do it somewhere that's really cool, that, most people on that staff have probably never been to before, that's pretty cool. So, hey, great on Fran and Syracuse. Like, hey, if you guys want to go out there and go do that, that's a great way to get headlines, and it's a great way to see where you are. You don't have anything to lose. And I don't think I'll leave it at this point too. I think the days of like college football being these like super secretive operations where like nobody knows what nobody else has until the season starts are long and dead, between transfer portal and the number of outlets that are out there that are always talking about things. Like, look, we knew last year going into the season, they said the experts that were going to some of these closed practices for that 1 hour viewing period and all the prognostication interviews that came out, they said, the secondary might be a little weak. We'll see what's going to happen with that. And, it didn't seem like that was going to be the case the first couple games. And then it came back in spades after that. So
Yeah.
people know what they have. There's no mysteries anymore.
That's very true. And I would also say for the aspect of even just covering the Canes right now and watching a lot of people be at practice and things like that, it's really hard because there's so many rules that a lot of programs have when it's in regards to players who may be injured or partially injured. You can't film them, you can't watch them, they don't really practice. So you're really limited to see even your key players, and we'll get into the spring stuff a little bit later. But I think for something like this, I think people are recognizing that college football isn't on a trajectory to becoming the NFL. Basically, it's a business, and the shorter you can make the off season, the better. And the NFL knows that. That's why like there's such an emphasis on the trade deadline and the draft, because it's like that's what you basically go into. You get it's like Super Bowl, you get a lull for 2 weeks, and you get the trade deadline, and then you got a week off or two, or then you get the combine, which they really kind of incorporate into the NFL like model. And then you get into draft, and then you have a little like month or two off, then you get into the fall. It's like year round basically. It's a max, I would say you get 6 weeks before anything next is happening. College football wasn't like that. And college football for a long time has been like, come January 1st until you get to August, it's pretty much dead. And it would be really cool. I think this idea that Deion is proposing, where teams play other teams, I think that's amazing, because this is the other thing. A little like inside college football is the spring game. 90% of the time, your starters are only playing at max a half. Usually, sometimes maybe a quarter and a half, but they're not playing the full scrimmage. Very, very rarely do you have your starters playing a full scrimmage. So like I was alluding to earlier, you're really kind of just testing out, seeing what your freshmen and new recruits are coming in, what they look like, get them used to the system. And I think it would be really cool to kind of see like you said, not only do you know what you have, but you kind of know what you have in competition. I think it kind of allows you to dial in a little bit more. And especially for the programs who end before that spring portal, you can go out and get players now with the transfer portal and NIL. I think this is slam dunk. I think obviously the con, just like any other con, for spring football, is injury, and that's like the number one like goal in spring football, is maybe not to assess your team, but to come out uninjured and healthy, on the other end. So I guess when you ramp up the competition in that sense, you can kind of have a little bit of I guess a threat of being injured, but that can happen week one, right? We saw it with oh my gosh, who got Jalen Rivers was one in the game against the Gators, and then who was on defense? Who was that on defense that got injured that we
Well,
lost all
Ruben
year?
Bain got hurt.
Ruben Bain too. Yes, I
Yeah.
forgot about Ruben Bain getting injured that game. So it's like whether it's a spring game or the first game, I mean, injuries are going to happen, right? But I think if you can create a little buzz, but you can also, this is what I also love about it. Okay, cool. Well, the second half of the scrimmage, we're going to see our second team go against your second team. What do our backups look like? I think that really will give you a taste of what this next season will look like, because again, we talked about it all last season. The decline of the SEC was directly impacted by depth, right? Like we saw week after week, you could just see the teams that were notoriously dominant were not as dominant this year because they didn't have that depth. So if you can kind of gauge your depth and say, okay, well, what are we looking like? Oh, there's a steep drop off. Okay, well, maybe we go get a guy who, he's not quite a starter at another school, but we can make him a backup and a glorified backup, almost like a 1B starter, and have him ready in the wings so that when we can keep that fresh rotation going.
Absolutely. I mean, it all makes perfect sense.
And what do you think? What do you think are your cons besides? Do you think there's any other cons besides the injuries to having a
I
spring
mean,
game with against the team?
and the only thing about that too is like, let's say, if anything, you kind of you kind of justify the injuries a little bit more, because imagine how bad it would feel like if you're one of your own teammates and you happen to get injured during the spring game against your own team versus getting injured against other competition. Like, if anything, it kind of helps justify some of those preseason injuries if it happens to take place, which nobody ever wishes for. But I mean, like anything else, it might be something that needs to be ironed out and regulated a little bit, in the sense of like, okay, these are two different conference teams. Whose officials are coming to that training camp? Are you going to
Oh,
bring
that's a great
both
point.
conferences officials to playing camp? That would be great. I'd love to. It would be a great. Here's the problem: you might actually ruin your recruiting if you're Syracuse or if you're any other team that's doing that, because if you got both Big 12 officials and ACC officials there, and one clearly sucks, and that's clearly going to be the ACC's. You know how bad that league is. Now, if you're the ACC, you may have an opportunity here to say something like, go learn from some other conferences officials so we can get these calls kind of consistent across the board, because as of right now, the league you play in dictates the style that you play in. If you can get, this might be a great opportunity to help level that field and officiating across the board by picking up and having them interact with each other too. And hey, maybe instead of the teammates and the other, like, the different players fighting each other on the field, maybe the refs will start fighting each other in playing camp. That'd be great. I'd
we
pay
could
for that.
we could do it like the Red River rivalry and just like split it at the 50-yard line. And on this side are all ACC officials, and on this side are all Big 12 officials. So once you cross the 50, you get the opposing teams like officials, or you get your own officials. That actually would probably be better once you when you're whatever direction you're going in. You're like, all we gotta do is cross the 50. We get our officials.
Can they like blow the whistle and have them like run out and sprint out on the field like substitutions, like the defensive players have to do? So you can watch some like 65-year-old, who's like 200 pounds overweight, just pull a hammy going out there. Be
Yeah,
great.
that'd be amazing. But speaking of spring football, we have spring football going on down here in Coral Gables. I've been keeping a slight pulse on it. It's just kind of hard too, because like we were talking about earlier, it's not like we don't see Carson Beck out there. We're not seeing some of the other starters. We're not seeing any of the injured players who have come in. So that includes a lot of the guys from the transfer portal. So it's kind of hard to get a gauge, especially because you and I live very busy lives. This is honestly a hobby for us. So it's not like we're able to get down, to Green Tree and see these guys live. But I've been watching. What have you been keeping a pulse on, Rudy, when it comes to the Cane Spring camp?
A couple things. I think Carson Beck has a wonderful handoff.
Yeah.
It's nice to see him do that little pull out. And then also it's really just seeing if anything happens defensively from practice. It's like, did
Yeah.
the secondary do something? Is there any word of improvement? Does it feel like it's a better unit? I mean, everything that's coming out right now seems like it's sunshine and rainbows, in the sense of, wow, they've really upgraded defensively. Again, big grains of salt there to take with that.
Boulders of salt, boulders of salt.
Asteroids and comets of salt, um, moons that can be classified as planets as of salt.
Yeah,
All of
exactly.
that, just to say, let's pump the brakes. Let's hope that ends up working out in the fall. The spring, that sounds wonderful. I would love to keep hearing about how there's ongoing competition from those positions and that they're making plays in the ball. That's great. Also, they're doing it against what we expect to be Miami's backup quarterbacks. So, we could take that with another enormous grain of salt.
Yeah, I think for me, what I've been kind of keeping an eye on is I obviously we all know like it's going to be the defense, but in being direct with the defense, it's how are these new coaches working out? What's the gelling like? Because again, you've got three completely new coordinators on the side of the field that desperately needed help. But even within that, those position groups, like we're returning Jason Taylor on the line and have him. And I know we have a new defensive line coach, but that's again D line was okay. It wasn't the worst, but it wasn't the glaring issue, right? So now you've got three new coaches coming in, a new coordinator who happens to fall not directly in the DB position, but linebackers they can work closer. They're like the middlemen, right? They can work with the lines, they can work with the DBs. And so for me, it's been watching the coaches gel. And from what I'm hearing from all reports, and again with these asteroid sized grains of salt, um, it sounds like everyone's doing really well. A lot of people have been mentioning, I've been noticing that the DBs specifically look really good size wise, talent wise. It you can tell there was an upgrade, like you were mentioning, and to me, that's something I want to like key in on because this was the exact opposite reporting we were getting last year at this time, right? Where it was like, oh, the secondary is a little shaky. It's a little iffy. It's a little sus at best. When people who have been following the team, watching practices for 10 plus years, start saying, hey, the talent that we're getting in this year, the size of these guys, the speed, the agility, the twitchiness, that's the number one word used this season, the twitchiness of these guys is
Twitchy is yeah, that's going to be called the it's like the word of the year, and it's also like this season we brought to you by the letter T.
yeah.
T for twitchy. It's exactly what we're looking at here.
I can't tell you how many people that have been going to practice have been use that word. I can just drop them like, okay, I'm just gonna make sure I make note of that because everyone keeps saying twitchy. So I'm just like, okay. I love that they're doing a lot of people were mentioning also the drills in the personnel drills that they're doing specifically on defense are looking really good. I've also heard that you're seeing not that he doesn't, but people are seeing, the media are seeing Mario get really hands-on when it comes to the O-line this spring. And I love to see that with like, especially like there, one podcast I was watching was talking about how he was kind of, he like literally got in there with Francis Mauigoa, and Francis is, he's kind of like our golden calf right now on the O-line. And I love to see that. So to me, it's like, I think I know what we're going to get with Carson Beck for the most part. I mean, we're going to have to wait till fall camp really decide that. He's throwing the ball. I mean, granted, he's doing it laying on his back, throwing it 6 inches above him. But what kind of hope does that give you? When have you seen those videos of Carson throwing the ball?
I saw a couple where he actually threw like with his left hand. It
Mm,
was some of those were like it
I
wasn't
did see
like
one of those. Yeah.
yeah. I thought that was pretty interesting. And also to touch on some of the coaches too, like Damian Lewis is the defensive tackles coach now, who is
Mm-hmm.
a former Miami defensive lineman. I think there's an upgrade there to bring back one of your own because he was there at the same time as Mario, and Mario is a graduate assistant on those teams. So in terms of like understanding what the work ethic is supposed to look like, see, this is his return to Green Tree with an indoor practice facility and not as many outdoor practice fields, but there's a lot there that they can, bring perspective to the new kids who are playing now to say like, look, here's what it means to be a part of this program and to work alongside like the rest of your defensive staff and coming back with this defensive philosophy of simplifying the coverages and the assignments and just getting aggressive. Because we've talked about it during the season. We'll talk about it ad nauseum until the first snap against Florida this coming season. But this era of college football is different. The offenses go very fast. Nothing is super complicated because nobody sticks around long enough to learn the concepts. So if you could
Right.
be explosive, you could be aggressive, you should be successful. And to talk about Mario Cristobal getting more hands-on with the offensive line, if we're going to like read the between the lines on a few of these things, I'm going to play optimist and say that it sounds like he doesn't need to worry about other units right now. So if you're
Yeah.
watching him go around to, if I couldn't tell you where he was last year at this point in time, if he was sitting around the defensive units and watching them a little bit and letting Alex Mirabal take over the offensive line, 100%. That's his love. That's his passion between
Yeah.
it. As much as twitchy is like the phrase, the previous phrase from like the first 3 seasons of the Mario Cristobal era at Miami was great hips.
Great hips.
We heard a lot of great hips. And now that we have Twitchy in the play, like it sounds like we've got everything in the hip department and the size department. Now we're going after some speed. And I think one more thing, Chris, that sounded really like interesting to hear in the offseason was the talk about Ruben Bain actually, trimming weight off and trying to
Right.
get back close to where he looked his freshman year. He was a little like undersized by most people's like assumptions as a true freshman, but had all of that speed and elusiveness to pair with his power. He put on some muscle in the offseason and came back. And I'm wondering if that's more of like hey, yeah, some players have to put on more size. In this case, maybe it was too much size for him, which was what was
Well,
either,
I
yeah,
think I think that's also because the plan last year was to move him inside on the D line, and so they wanted him to put on a little bit of weight for when in those instances where he was in the inside trenches. That way, he wasn't getting completely bullied. But this year, from what I've heard, is they're going to keep him strictly as an edge rusher. He's not going to move inside. They're going to keep Moten, and I'm trying to think of the other player. I can't think of his name. But they're going to keep those two as the starters inside, and then keep Ruben Bain on the outside. Justin Scott. That was the
I
other
was
one.
about to say Justin Scott. Yep.
Yeah, Justin Scott was the other D line, and they're saying he looks phenomenal, which is kind of what
Yep.
I was kind of like hoping for, because not this past cycle, but the cycle before where he was entering, he was a major flip from Ohio State. Like, you would think he was like almost like Francis Maui Noah level, but on the defensive side, So
Yep.
to see him not like kind of be to see him not have that Ruben Bain moment last year, where Ruben in his first year, he put that stamp down. He was like, I'm Ruben Bain, to see Justin Scott not have that last year was a little bit of a letdown, but to see that he is stepping up and that he is playing to his potential is amazing. One, I'm going to ask you yours. I'll go first on mine. One player I've actually been really excited and hearing a lot of buzz about is JoJo Trader.
Yep.
So apparently JoJo Trader has looked phenomenal, twitchiness included. But there are a lot of people are talking about his speed and the ability to get to the ball, which I thought you hear these things, and just a little background. JoJo Trader was 1B. I wouldn't say he was the second option. I would say he was 1B for Chaminade, which is where Jeremiah Smith
Jeremiah
played.
Smith. Yeah.
So this was one of the things when we got JoJo Trader. It was kind of like, well, we're gonna go for Jeremiah Smith, but if we don't get Jeremiah Smith, JoJo Trader's a great second option. Which again, I will always say he's a 1B. We didn't get to see that much last year because we had some great receivers, but to see us lose the talent that we did, but see JoJo Trader kind of step up, and then again, he played with Jeremiah Smith. They were close friends. They were competitors together. Not to say we're going to get a Jeremiah Smith, but what do you think of JoJo Trader to kind of like stepping up and developing?
I mean, it makes sense. Remember that Pop-Tart Bowl? He had a great play, shook off a tackle and went into the end zone. And that was something that I think a lot of Miami fans were hoping to see at some point during the season. So naturally, you'd think with that momentum that he gained from the bowl game, regardless of the outcome, because no one cares about a non-playoff bowl game, whether you win it or you lose it, look good there. So taking that momentum into the offseason and continuing to wow with his moments is great to see. And he's another year of understanding what the offense is supposed to look like. They know he's going to have to block and running plays. He's going to have to be, a contributor in terms of like what the route trees and what the route concepts look like. So all of that is fantastic. So I'm super excited to hear like that he's having such a great spring. And I hope it evolves into the actual season, because there are a ton of guys who Miami has had for a year or two that we're expecting to break out at some point in time. There just weren't enough footballs last year to go around.
Yeah. Speaking of breaking out, is there anyone you're kind of keeping an eye on? Is there anyone you've seen or you've heard reports from? I know obviously you haven't seen, but like what I mean is by seeing, is there anyone you've heard a report on that you've been like, finally, this is what I've wanted to read. This is what I've been wanting to hear.
It's Xavier Lucas for me. I mean,
Yeah.
having him on campus and being as advertised as being that like big physical shutdown defensive back
Yeah.
that is twitchy. Maybe we should get like a counter going. Should we have like a counter?
I will 100% go back and edit a twitchy counter into it.
I'm just wondering what, like, we don't have to do it for this episode, but I think from here on out, like we find a sound effect. Like maybe if we grab a sample from like one of the press conferences where we hear like, you know what? It's got to be Mario Cristobal. We hear twitchy.
Yeah.
As soon as we say it, just boom right in the corner, twitchy. Out of that. But anyway,
like Ed Boon from Mortal Kombat, he like pops out to the right, like toasty, but like
twitchy. Yes, exactly. Amazing. Yes, we are ideating live as part of the show.
Listen,
this is why you subscribe to us.
Absolutely.
But anyway, like to hear Xavier Lucas like have all of that, believing the hype coming in, but then the other piece too is the chip on his shoulder just from all the crap that happened at Wisconsin.
Absolutely.
To be here and to now like, look, that chip should never leave the shoulder, because even though that drama was well behind us and unjustified, We both know from being in the media world, every time he's on the field, every
Oh,
ACC game,
100%.
they're going to talk about it.
Oh, 100. And they're going to ask him about it too. And here's the best part is it's undeniable that it's going to be brought up, especially if he has a breakout year. So if the
Oh, yeah.
defense, and by the way, now that I think about it and I'm saying it out loud, I don't even think he necessarily has to have a breakout year. I think if the defense just turns around even the slightest, right, and it only allows 21 points a game as opposed to the 35 we were averaging last year, I guarantee you they're going to go to him. They're going to, because I've heard a lot of great things, and I love how you specifically mentioned the size and as advertised, because that's something that I've read and been watching with the spring practices, and that
Mhm.
he is a different breed. He is a different size. What I was talking about earlier when I was saying that noticeable upgrade, he was one of those people. He was one of those players that they were mentioning that was, oh no, this guy is no, he's ready. He's ready to come in, and not only is he ready to come in, but he's going to be a difference maker.
And the other one is Zechariah Poyser.
Yes, I've heard a lot about him as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be, it's again, we got to take everything with a monster mountain of salt.
Yep.
But it's very, it's a very good sign. It's a green flag that we're hearing these kind of reports, whereas at this time last year it was the exact opposite. It was the
It's giving upgrade.
yeah, it's giving up. It's very giving, very upgrade. Absolutely, yeah. Very demure. It's very, it's a very demure DB room this season. Okay, this spring. It's
They're not defensive backs. They're demure backs.
demure.
Okay.
Exactly. We will revisit exactly how we feel after the spring game, but I wanted to touch upon the spring game a little bit just because we've finished our first week, we've gotten a full week in, and then once we get the spring game in, Rudy and I will give our final evaluation on the team and as we head into fall camp. But we can't stop talking about the Canes without talking about the big news. I don't want to talk about it, but I feel like everyone's talking about it, so we'll briefly touch over it. The breakup heard around the world. What's going on with Carson Beck? Is he leaving? Is he staying? What's going on with the Cavinder twins? What say you, Rudy?
I just want to start here. We've talked about this multiple times. When someone gives you the when someone gives you this like line of BS about how, oh, Miami wouldn't really be that great of a place for a docu series.
Oh yeah.
Could you imagine just the episode alone that would come from like the full circle of Hanna Cavinder was the greatest recruiter in Miami Hurricanes football history to bring Carson Beck over from Georgia, only to have this drama break up and like drama to happen and then break up like within like 3 months of him coming on campus.
Yeah.
So the only thing I'll touch on in terms of this whole situation is that like these are 20-year-old kids. So like in terms of whatever,
No, I think Carson's older than that. Let me look this
well,
up.
they're
Go ahead. While
20
you're talking.
something. Like they're like 21, 22. Like they're not any older than 22. So they're still like people do some dumb things at that
Carson Beck's
time. And if the
23 years
rumors,
old. Good God.
okay, they're
You
probably
know it's
both 23.
I
That's
never do this, by
still
the way. I never look at
good.
these kids' ages because when I see birth year as 2001, I'm like, Jesus
It
Christ on a
hurts.
motorbike. I'm like, I am freaking old.
It hurts.
It hurts a
It really
lot.
hurts.
It really, I'm not gonna lie. 2001, this guy wasn't even born. This this guy was born after September 11th. He wasn't even around. Like that's, oh
What
my
was his
God.
what's his actual birthday?
No, November 19th. Good
Oh
God, he's
wow! So it's even late in Miami's national championships. Even November 19th. I think we were playing like. So I think that was even like after the Boston College game, like
I
that. I
mean,
think actually, like, go ahead.
at least Hannah was born before September 11th, but still 2001. She's 24.
Either way, like 23 and 24-year-olds still do a lot of dumb things. Like, look, we know enough people our age that do dumb things when it comes to relationships. So like as long as this drama happens now and doesn't carry over into the season, like I think it kind of goes it doesn't go unsaid, but like I think it's remarkable that we went through an entire season of Cam Ward and had zero drama. And
Yeah.
now we've had approximately 90 days And we're already getting some random drama that like apparently I don't like looking these things up, but apparently he's done this before with like Snapchat back in Georgia. So
Yeah,
it's just like,
it's so stupid. To me, here's the other thing. Like, and this isn't a knock on Hannah. I'm not trying to sound chauvinistic, but it's like, listen, the dude's in Athens. He's coming to Miami. Like, I'm just saying, it's a completely different dating pool. It's a completely different potential down here compared to up there. And I would listen. I love college towns. College towns are great, but Miami is special and it's got that. But the reason why I also wanted to cover this, because that's as far as we're going to go with the couple stuff, but I was segueing to this, is the BS that like all these clout chasers on Instagram and social media are running. It's Carson Beck. Is he going to leave Miami? Is he going to leave Miami? He should go to Notre Dame. They should go to Notre Dame.
yeah, that's the guy you want at Notre Dame. That's the guy. That's exactly what you're talking about, like prime material for South
It's
Bend.
like if you're gonna, here's my thing though, like if, and I get it, you're clout chasing, but if you're going to like literally pick a school, why Notre Dame? Like one, like why would he go from Athens to Miami then back to South Bend? Like, has anyone ever been to South Bend? Let me tell you something. I've never been to South Bend, but I've been to the Midwest. And let me tell you, there's not a I mean, I've been to the best Midwest city. I've been to Chicago a billion times. Chicago's got nothing on Miami. So there is no reason in this world why you would come to Miami, live here for a few months, and go, yeah, I just want to go back to the Midwest. That sounds great. No, and not to mention, go to a program that's been gutted by other Big Ten schools and the NFL draft. Like, why you would be going to it would be better. You would be better off going back to Athens than going to South Bend.
Yeah, I mean the thing about this, and I think this is the one relationship drama aside, because of this whole like situation that's happened. Carson Beck's got to be extra focused now because um, just like we talked about Xavier Lucas always going to have like analysts talking about the whole drama with Wisconsin. If he doesn't come out like lights out from the first game of the year, everyone's going to be talking about this being the issue. You're going to have some really butthurt Miami fans who are going to say things like, well, he should have been looking at the playbook instead of looking at Snapchat. And you should
Mm,
have had, all that stuff is going to come out. So it's a matter of if he could just keep his head down and like do what he needs to do. I mean, that's the whole reason why he came to Miami, was to have
yeah.
this, fantastic receiving core, to have this entire, football operation around you to increase your draft stock, just like it did for Cam Ward the year before. Everything's fine. Like literally, look, Jameis Winston right now is like a national treasure after what happened to him his last year at Florida State with all of his drama between yelling out things in interviews on campus and going after crab legs. We'll be seeing him at the catch with my job with Sport Fishing Championship in April. Everyone loves him now. This will just be another, memory that they're going to laugh about in like 10 years time if they just get the business done on the field.
And I know we said they're older, like 24, but they're still kids, right? So there's still
Yeah.
time for them to from breakups to makeups. DMX said it best, you know. So it's like we still have plenty of time for them to get back together. So the story, and I'm gone again. We are having massive technical difficulties, but we're gonna keep it going. And we're back. My God. Apparently, Rudy, we are talking about stuff that is too hot to handle. So sorry about that. But moving on from the Carson Beck drama, we were talking about last week the ACC settling with FSU and with Clemson for this uneven distribution of revenue. So I didn't think anything of it, moved on with my week. Turns out there was a report where a Power Four athletic director had gone to I think it was the Athletic, and had mentioned that ACC's decision had kind of caused some stirrings in their conference about, oh, which I think you and I had kind of already alluded to, that, hey, if the ACC actually does move forward with this uneven distribution, it won't be long before the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Michigans, and the Ohio States of this world go, sir. So, first question to you, Rudy, is do you think this was actually an SEC/Big Ten school who did this, or do you think this was someone maybe in the ACC trying to stir the pot a little bit?
I think it's another Power Four conference. I would not be surprised if this is the SEC and the Big Ten, because look, as much as another ACC school may want to like stir the pot a little bit and say, "Oh yeah, some people are not happy about that." It's a copycat league. Every one of these sports properties are copycat leagues.
Yep.
So as soon as one does something a little different that may give an advantage to the top, the other teams at the top are going to want that too. Because I mean, look, as much as these other conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten have some great competition and have some really good teams, they're top heavy as well. So when you talk about Alabama's who have been on top for, a decade, and they're going to find out like, wait, we have an opportunity to make more money than Vandy does because they make the exact same from their conference allotment. We need as much money as we can right now because we're on a downward slide. How do we stop the bleeding? Let's go to our conference and see what we can do because we're still really entertaining if we go on this downward slide. So we got like another year or two that we can go with this until we have to seriously reconsider what we need to do, and including a coaching change, among other things, in Tuscaloosa. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And same thing with Ohio State and the Big Ten to say, we've been carrying this conference for a long time. Yeah, Michigan had a good run the year before that. We got Oregon now who's doing really well, but hey, we got a lot of big teams that's here. I don't want to split the pie evenly anymore because I'm still the one at the top.
Yeah, I at first when I read this, it reeked of like a Big 12 or an ACC AD kind of coming forward with this, just to like obviously hedge their bets, make them look better, kind of stir the pot. But the more I thought about it, sat on it, I was like, no, I'm like, where there's smoke, where there's fire, trust your gut. You and I have thought about this ad nauseum this season. We were like, hey, if this
Oh, yeah.
does happen, it's only a matter of time because it's very hard if you're again if you're carrying a brand and you're carrying a league for you to share it with someone who literally is a bottom feeder. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I just literally mean that like you're lucky if you get four conference wins, three conference wins a season, right? Your Vanderbilts, your Wake Forest, things like that, right? And not only that, but then you have like these schools who they're not spending as much as the Georgias and the Bamas of this world. And now they're just getting hundreds of millions of dollars to just put towards other things besides football. And that's not going to carry your product. And that's not going to, especially when we start moving. And I know we're already moving there, but when it becomes a little bit more official to these super leagues, the Big Ten, this is the problem with the big, I think every team but one team in the SEC ranked in the top 50 last season, finished in the top 50 last season. 7 or 8 Big Ten schools finished outside the top 50.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in terms of like how the schedules were so unbalanced that there wasn't a lot of depth in the Big Ten. I mean, Penn State, who made the college football playoff, had a awful schedule. Indiana, who looked decent against, lower tier competition, didn't do so well against major competition. So it just goes to show you that like that conference still has a long way to go to trying to be, competitive from top to bottom. But I think something else that's interesting about like a lot of the distribution of wealth of money in these conferences is that a lot of the smaller programs in the SEC, for example, have been mandated, and also in the Big Ten, there's no like coincidence here that a lot of these programs are expanding their stadiums. They're not doing it because they're getting more demand. They're doing it because they're required as part of their ongoing membership for these conferences. So for example, like Mizzou is expanding their stadium by like an extra, I don't know how many thousands of seats. I think something that we all noticed very closely watching Vanderbilt games, because we actually cared to watch them this year since they beat Alabama and played Texas pretty close as well, having they went like 6-6 this year. Their stadium is completely under construction as well. So they're all expanding their capacities. But let's be honest. Yeah, they're playing SEC football, but like you're not going to fill those stadiums in some of those markets. Columbia, Missouri, as much as it's a wonderful school and it's a Big Three journalism school, people like us who know that kind of crap, not exactly going to be known as a perennial football powerhouse that, hopefully they go over 500 every few years. Same thing in Vanderbilt's sake. So they're only doing it to satisfy because of all this extra money they're getting. And that's going to be the exact argument that an Alabama or LSU or a Texas, Oklahoma is going to make in the SEC to say, We could use more of that money to actually do stuff that we need to fulfill and satisfy versus you guys building an extra 15 to 20,000 seats for a stadium that frankly doesn't need it.
Yeah, and I think even like you can only build so many facilities, right? And then you got this extra cachet of cash. And on top of that, I think because we're still in the infancy stage of NIL and the transfer portal, a lot of traditional bottom feeders, they haven't seen the ROI in putting money into football. Fast forward to
Nope. And
today, Fast forward to today though, you can quickly turn around a program. You
and
can bring and
also that
you can
goes
buy
for
talent, you know?
yeah, and that goes for Northwestern too, because remember they had to build that entire temporary stadium on the lake,
Yeah.
and now they're building a brand new one. And then, something else that's like a new kind of development in this way, because of this April 17th decision that's coming through about actually paying, players
Mm-hmm.
across the board, paying
Yep.
athletes across all of the college programs. Remember that 30% increase I've been, complaining about and bitching about with Miami?
Mm-hmm.
That's across the board. I think there was an Alabama fan that actually came out recently saying that it was a Georgia Bulldogs fan who came out saying that his tickets went up by 30%.
Yep.
So there's something going on here where every single team or every single program has done the calculations. And I guess the industry standard now is saying we're going to raise 30% across the board in all college programs.
But that's honestly that's just macroeconomics for the country in general. I mean, you go to any industry I mean, not to get political, but like when you talk about tariffs, it's like tariffs aren't gonna no, it's not the company's not gonna eat that. They're gonna pass that along to the customer. And it's the same thing with this NCAA ruling thing. Like, you think that the universities are all of a sudden gonna go, oh well, I guess we've got to allot this money that we're getting from Fox and CBS give it to these kids. They're like, no, 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 no. We're gonna continue to increase prices. We're gonna increase the price of merchandise, season tickets, everything else it's gonna cost. Here's the horrible part. Could you imagine? I can't even imagine, and I'm sure someone will do this eventually. The what are they called? The activity fee, the athletic fee for students. Remember, we used to have that, like, to get like to go to
Yeah.
like all the games. What is that gonna look like? Because like they're just
Yeah.
basically gonna rob other students to give it to their athletes. They're gonna be like, okay, Timmy, like, thanks for driving a Porsche, but we're gonna need about 30% more from your tuition because for your activity fee has gone up 60% because we need to pay, Saquon on the football team. It's sick. It's sad. It's really weird that how this is all going to go down. Because here's the other thing too, and this has been an issue that a lot of people have been talking about for the last couple of years, but the pricing out of college football fans. Like, it's college football was the blue collar sport. It was in the rural areas. It was in the markets that couldn't afford or couldn't bring a professional team to their area. It was a traditional, like a generational sport where, if your dad played there, your grandfather played there, you're gonna play there. Like, we're seeing that eroded because it's now becoming a sport and an event that only rich people can go to. I mean, you and I both know how much it costs. It's not fun. I'm not going to discuss it because that's just not appropriate. But like, it's not cheap to get season tickets to college football, and you only
No.
go to 6 games. Like, I mean, we're
Yeah.
lucky
And
we're getting 8 this year, but on
you're
average, you're
getting
getting,
8.
yeah.
You're getting 8. I'll be in Orange Beach, Alabama for Miami Notre Dame. Super excited. Or sorry, for the Florida game. I don't know where I'm going to be for Notre Dame, but I might be out of town as well.
Side conversation we'll have real quick right now. My wife knows every year. I'm like, you know where I want to be from August to December every single year. It's 6 weekends. That's all I ask for. Just here's the schedule. Sure enough, last year it was the no, 2 years ago it was the Texas A&M game. This year it's the Florida game. She was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna play," because her birthday is in September, which I get. I get it. I'm not telling you to not celebrate your birthday, but can we just move it to either a bye week or an away game? We're going to have one of them during the month of September. So let's just do it that weekend. Does my wife listen?
Yeah.
No. So now we have to
No.
move our vacation plans for her birthday. And I'm like, and my argument right now, she's probably going to see this at some point, but my argument now, she'll be afterwards. I'm like, listen, we moved my birthday trip to January, even though my birthday's in December. A week is not going to hurt. We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
This is the Florida game. It's the most important game besides Notre Dame that we're going to play. Sorry, Florida State, you're
Marriage is
garbage.
marriage is all about compromise, right? And that means sometimes you give a little and sometimes you take a little and sometimes you give up a little bit. And if you're always giving up football, you're not compromising.
Listen, and the
Sorry.
6 or 7 times I'm taking these little crotch goblins to Disney, and I hate that. It's not fun. I'm actually, I think this is the first time in like 5 years that I'm actually excited. I'm going this weekend to Disney, but it's not fun. That is literally like hell week. Okay, when you go to Disney, I don't complain about that. I just ask for my 6 Saturdays. Just give me my
You're
six
not sitting
Saturdays.
there. You're not
No.
like watching the game on your phone going, oh, another missed
Oh,
tackle. That's great.
oh, oh, extra
Oh look. Oh look, we had fumble the ball. That's great.
I won't
I
lie.
gave up another kick return
We,
for a
we, we, we,
touchdown.
we do in the fall usually plan our Disney trips around away games, and I absolutely am watching on my phone in line. I'm like, yeah, man. Like my kid's like, I'm like,
By the way,
we don't have time for this.
when you're editing this later, you're gonna see that there's a portion where my face goes like beet red for like a good 2 minutes because all I could think of was if you're ABC like World News Tonight or something like that, you can use your ESPN brand to explain tariffs to people by just equating college football ticket prices. Like the fact that that's the way you can do that and get to like every market to understand what tariffs are is like blowing my mind right now in terms of
And
how
do you
you
want?
can do that.
And I know we're going deep down the rabbit hole right now, but this is something I've always wanted to bring up. It's like, here's my other issue with Disney. You own ABC, which also means you also own ESPN. You should have, once you log into like the Disney Wi-Fi that everyone logs into when you get on the Disney property, you should give everyone access to ESPN all the time on their phone. Do you know how many dads would happily go to Disney in the fall knowing they could stream any college football game on their phone while they're in the parks? That to me it's just like duh. You're printing
I'm gonna
money.
I'm actually like giving away IP, intellectual property, by talking about this. But imagine if Disney like gave away like mouse ears for dads that just had like the audio feed of whatever game is being carried on ESPN for them to like happily walk around and enjoy so they don't miss any of their action. Or even if it's like, hey, we're living in 2025, they can make headsets for dads where you can see where to go and you can
Augmented
have the game
reality,
over in one corner.
absolutely.
You could have augmented reality so you could like
Absolutely.
look over when you're at Epcot and you could see like in between that where the lake where they do the fireworks show, you could just have the field right there with whichever game they want to watch.
Yep. And see, this is my thing. That's why I said on the phone, you don't even need to put TVs with the games on. You just put it on their phones. Everyone likes. You know what? Do it. Go even further. Force people to download the Walt Disney World app and then have a little tab live stream. Bam. Now you've got people downloading your app. Now you've got people engaged, and you've got happy dads.
Here, we noticed that you were experiencing a 2 hour queue time for test track, whatever this
No,
is. Enjoy this live coverage of Ohio State, Maryland. Yeah, exactly.
absolute. I would want to. No one would. No dad would ever complain ever again about waiting in an hour and a half line ever. It'd be like 90 minutes, easy. Bam. I'm gonna watch the first half of this game. Done.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Anyways, back to the uneven revenue. My question is how long then? Let's just say this wasn't um a major SEC or Big Ten program. How long, if so, do you think it'll take for those big major programs and brands to push their weight around and demand uneven revenue?
There's going to be like a collective bargaining conversation that happens at some point in time because right now it's like what they call them charter agreements or
Right.
what's the other word like Formula One's called like a Concord agreement. I'm guessing it's like a charter agreement for the different conferences. Within like 3 to 5 years of one of those coming up for renewal is exactly when that's going to happen. Let's just put it that way.
You don't think it'll be sooner now that the
It
ACC's done it?
It could be. It's a matter of like how behind like closed doors conversations those get. And if it's like an immediate dismissal, if there's a team out there, if there's a program out there that has enough money that says, you know what, we'll let our lawyers fight it out for about a year and we can settle and get what we want out of it, they might do it because that's exactly what Florida State and Clemson just did.
Yeah, see the thing the conundrum I got into was Florida State and Clemson were suing to get out of their grant of rights to leave the not necessarily to leave the ACC, but that was kind of the well, if we don't get our way, this is kind of where we're going to go, right? And they very well may still leave the ACC, which a lot of people think they're going to do. where do program and to go to the SEC, a Big Ten, right? What's the bigger boat for the SEC? Which leads me to my belief, which is if this does come up and it's not taken, and there is no bending of the knee from the smaller schools, or this does rub certain programs that are been historically dominant the wrong way, like a Texas. Because here's the thing with the SEC, right? The ACC is easy. You've got Clemson, FSU, Miami, and then there's a small drop off to your, UNCs, maybe an SMU because they won last year, but not really. Maybe a Virginia Tech, but there's not really that many brands, right? And the SEC, you've got your Texas, you've got Georgia, you've got Alabama, you've got Florida, you've got LSU, you've got like a minimum of 6 to 7 major brands who are going to want a larger chunk. And when you have two or three, like the ACC does, it's very easy to distribute unevenly. You have that many. It's like, where do you go? And I think at that point, once those big schools start asking for more money, you're not even looking at uneven to distribute. You're looking at the demise. And I think at that point, you'll start seeing, Big Ten and SEC schools start talking about, hey, that super conference, now's where we do it.
Yeah, I think it could be one of two things, because I think what the SEC and the Big Ten have both done phenomenal jobs at, regardless of, I don't like them, but I can give them credit where credit is
Yeah,
due.
absolutely.
They've been able to keep their programs loyal under the guise of like saying, look, we're all stronger together. We're a big brand all together, and making the SEC bigger than the programs. There's going to come a time where if you're an athletic department, if you are a board of directors, board of governors, trustees for one of these universities, where a few people are going to have their heads get really, really, really big and say, are we really not bigger than the SEC? Is it the sum of the parts, or is it us that's carrying the flag? Because if they don't get what they want and they think it's a worthy endeavor, they will happily go somewhere else where the boat may not be bigger, but they're the biggest fish in the pond. So if an ACC was somehow able to secure, let's go hypothetical, because this isn't discussed. This isn't anything that we actually think is going to happen in the next couple of years. But like, if Alabama decided to jump ship, or Georgia jump ship and go to the ACC, if Ohio State wanted to jump ship and go to the ACC, do those conferences still have that same like negotiating power with an ESPN, for example, to say like, oh, but the SEC is the SEC, not without its schools, not without its
Right.
full nucleus of schools. In that case, there becomes a little bit more parity, and it becomes a little bit more of an incentive to take care of your team. So it's like, it works for everybody for as long as what's the word I'm looking for? As long as status quo is maintained.
Right.
But as soon as something changes that status quo, like what's happening in the ACC with this whole new structure, now you don't have everybody's loyalty. And I think I have to look back and like figure out what the ages are of some of these athletic directors, because we'll see another shift as we start getting new athletic directors that come in as the older guys move off into the sunset and retire. Because when
Yeah,
that stuff
these
starts
commissioners.
happening,
Yeah, that's the other thing. These commissioners, it's not like a lifetime like tenure. Like
nope.
you serve for 3, 4, maybe 5 years, and then there's a new commissioner for each conference. Greg Sankey
Yeah.
aside, because he's just been steamrolling this power conference in the SEC. But it's also important to remember that we are in an influx time of college football. This is a very unique time. Zooming out 30,000 feet, fast forwarding 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're going to look at this 6 year, 7 year period as a very influx changing time, because what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of these contracts are based on the viewership, right? And it's not necessarily based on success. What it's based on is literal viewership, eyes you get. It used to be markets, but what people are moving more towards now with streaming and people tuning in is these brands, which is what I've been kind of harping on all season. And when you're a program like an SEC school where you have a student body every year of, let's just say a hypothetical 35 to 50,000 students every year, those are viewers. Now, let's just even say half of them watch college football regularly. That's 25,000 new people you're getting every year. And then you start looking at programs like a Boston College, a Miami, where you have smaller schools in markets that necessarily aren't as big, don't have as big of student bodies. It will naturally be harder for you to keep eyes. That's why the ACC really didn't have that great of viewership, because a lot of their schools were not one big schools, but two schools that really competed in football. So like you take the double-headed dragon of, a school that's small and then a school that's not really invested in football. A lot of people aren't going to watch it, right? Whereas you go to a school like, I don't know, like an LSU, right? LSU, it's a major state university. And then on top of it, it's poured money for decades into football. So it's been good and it's been really good. But that's why it gets the viewership. It's why it's got the brand it does. Alabama, the same thing. Alabama with the caveat that Nick Saban really turned that program around. Yes, Alabama has 1,000 national championships. Absolutely. That was back in the 60s. But when we talk about the peak of college football, when college football really blew up, early 80s going into the 2000s, Alabama was irrelevant. Minus a year or two in the early 90s where they played at Miami for a national championship. Yes, but they were not the program they were post Nick Saban or once the Nick Saban era begun. So when you look at these contracts, as we get into NIL, as we get into paying student athletes or whatever we're going to call them moving forward, the sport's going to change. And you're going to see that teams that, and I'm not saying like trying to be a homer when I say this, but programs like Miami that went away because the student body wasn't there, the viewership wasn't there. It was just hard to keep eyes, especially because when Miami's good, we keep eyes. But when Miami's not good, it's hard to watch us nationally. I'm talking about national, not talking about diehards, not talking about season ticket holders. But now that you see it, Miami's throwing money into football. We're taking it seriously, and you're seeing the turnaround. You're going to see other programs look at our program and go, we can model ourselves after that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's only a matter of time, and it's something that the landscape continues to shift. Like you said, this is very unstable ground that college football is on. So there's going to be these like huge pendulum swings from one direction to the next
Absolutely.
until there's some guardrails put on there. Which, by the way, art imitates life. That's exactly what like deregulatory environments look like. There's a lot of crazy pendulum swings until some federal body or governing body for different sports come in and put some regulations in place and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. But until then, it's the Wild West.
And this ruling that's coming, I've been just kind of trying to get ahead of it and trying to understand what's going to happen, because when it comes down, it's going to be a major story. It is really going to change because there's a major aspect when it comes to the NIL portion that's going to be taken away from the players. So when this
Yeah.
settlement comes down, there won't be this wild west of you can get whatever for an NIL deal. It's going to be through the school. And yes, the school will allow whatever, but if you think these schools aren't going to, because right now the collectives run the NIL, it's not the schools. It's a completely separate entity from the school. Once you bring the school back in, there's going to be a lot of bureaucratic tape. You're going to see these guardrails come on because there will, one, be a ruling, but two, the schools will be taking back over again and they'll be in charge, which they've been I'm not saying they're happy, but it's kind of been in this uncertain times to be like, hey, it's not our problem right now. The Supreme Court hasn't ruled, so we don't know. But once that happens, I think you're going to see a major shift. Major shift.
I agree.
Well, Rudy, we got another one in the books. Thank you guys for watching. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We will get this straight for next week. Until next time, y'all, be good, win the weekend, and as always, go Canes! Thank you all. Thank you
Let's
for all
go,
the
baby.
subscribers. Have a great week, y'all. We'll see y'all next time.